Welcome to God Seeker. This is Elizabeth Fulgaro. The current message: Cabin. My first years were blessed with that Old West type of upbringing, with horses in the field to be coaxed with grain into a halter so they could be led, brushed, saddled, and ridden out into the wide open spaces. The horses we had were old. They had been giveaways, horses others had no longer wanted. But that did not matter to us. How gladly, as an under 10 youngster, I would saddle up and ride, completely unaware that I was still relatively small and the horse definitely pretty large. Our property ran for 100 acres over foothill slopes, ravines, hilltops, and welcome flat meadows. Granite rocks were encountered just about everywhere, under the surface of the soil and jutting out above it, since the property was part of the lowest levels of the Sierra Nevada mountains. 100 acres is a good stretch of property for a young one to ride. It makes you feel like you're on your own in the middle of nowhere, yet you are safe within the confines of home, though the house is no more visible. To be free to roam in this way gave a healthy sense of independence. I was maybe 7 or 8 years old, definitely not older. I loved the smell of the large animal in my nostrils and the rhythmic movement of the horse as he walked where I directed, my body moving with him. Each ride was different, the trails never giving the same view or the same sensations. Even the air would be different, sometimes with a breeze, sometimes heavy and stifling with heat, sometimes chilled. Always novel aspects which kept the rides fresh. Each one was an adventure, where it was like I was grown up and in charge, but I wasn't. One day, our gentle Tennessee Walker quarter-horse cross gelding and I ventured a little further from the house than usual. We meandered down a part of a trail where we had not been on our own before. Oh, I knew where I was. It was right up against one border of our property, but over the hill and down into the next meadow from the family home. We had permission to walk across the unfenced meadow which belonged to the neighbor in order to get to an old lumber road that wound down through thick woods to a cold snowmelt creek. This was one of our escape routes each summer to Oz and refreshment when the high-temperature dry heat from the Sacramento Valley pressed in. But this time I was riding. Instead of plodding through the meadow on foot, this time I had a different agenda: to explore the meadow's shadowed corners instead of getting down to the coolness of the creek. I halted my horse to take a closer look around. There was a cabin ruin on the far side. I'd not really paid attention to it before. It was on our neighbor's side of the property, not ours, and not in the direction where we walked through in the usual way. I wanted to see the cabin up close. I was intrigued by the ruin. Just a few logs left over, which laid out a sprawled, helter-skelter frame on the ground, sort of marking out where the outer walls might have been. No longer any semblance of a shelter, just evidence of what had been. Someone had lived there. Here they had spent time in their life, not so recently. In the center of the single logs here and there was a pile of personal effects, odds and ends left over from living in that place which had been left behind. Mostly cooking utensils. I recognized the style of the speckled ceramic-covered metal coffee pot, cups, plate, and skillet. Had the person been a gold miner? There was no creek nearby, and I was not aware of any mine. What had brought the person here? My child mind revved up in imagining. Had it been one person? Or several? Or even many? What had been their thoughts? What had they experienced? What had they felt? And when were they here? What happened to them? People don't just disappear. This afternoon of exploring with my horse was over 50 years ago. Yet the memory remains. Why? Perhaps because it was eerie to my childlike mind to be so near to another life lived which was no more. To be so close to the evidence of a person who had been, but was now past. Life over. There is a similar sense which overcomes me every time I drive the Sierra Nevada backroads and see rock chimneys standing resolute and alone in open fields where homes once were. But all that remains is the chimney. Whatever house into which the chimney was built is now long rotted away. There were questions which surged to the surface as thoughts and went beyond wondering who the people were, what they dreamed, what they did, or even what brought them to live in such remote spaces. What was it all about? And why did it matter they had lived? Except for the small pile of personal effects I found at the cabin, what evidence that these people had existed remained? I believed in their eternal souls, so they were not dead, but somewhere they lived on. God alone knew whether or not they were with Him, because they had chosen Him as their God and King. But what difference did their existence make? This always brought me back around to broader rumination. What really mattered? Every life would cease to exist in this current space and time. There was no stopping this ongoing procession of souls. When all was said and done, here was one more reminder. It did not matter what possessions we had. Whatever titles we had collected did not mean anything in the grand scope of eternity. What did matter was any wisp of love which had emanated from us to others, whether there had been a positive or negative effect from our lives. The only legacy which remained, in a positive way, was whether we had chosen to love. Remember, by this I do not mean anything goes. I'm not referring either to a romantic encounter which leads to acts of physical intimacy either. I'm talking about something greater. It's joining in the not easy, difficult work of caring for one another, of choosing to be there in a positive way for someone else, the one next to you, in the way that one needs according to how God leads. This is you in the work for which God created you, being part of His ongoing, never-ceasing canopy of love for all. And you know, when you think about it, it's this work which has the greatest meaning and leaves behind a beautiful fragrance which wafts through all generations to come and isn't really hard at all. Let's finish with the focus Jesus gave us of the way to life of greater significance according to God. From the Gospel of Matthew chapter 22, verses 37 through 39. And Jesus replied to him, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind and intellect. This is the great, most important principle and first commandment. And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as you do yourself." Listen to the song Master Redeemer to reconsecrate yourself to God, which invites His Spirit to come in more and unify with you, to work through you to create an aroma of Him around you wherever He has allowed your life to take you. Listen to Master Redeemer from the Walk on Water album until it becomes your heart prayer. You can find the song Master Redeemer on my YouTube channel, various streaming services, and always on CD. Thank you for listening. God Seeker messages are brought to you by Eagle's Nest Foundation. This is Elizabeth Fulgaro. You know that I'm praying for you. Listen to the song Master Redeemer as your prayer until next time, and keep seeking God.